Welcome to the second in our series of videos on understanding music to be a better musician. If you haven't watched the first video on chord analysis and pop chord symbols, make sure that you at least have an understanding of chord roots, qualities, and inversions before continuing with today's video. Your understanding of music all hinges on your perception of how the notes and harmonies relate to the overall key or tonal center of the music. In this video, we're going to correct some common myths about how to find the music's key and then show you the right way to get the correct key every time you look at a piece of music. So let's get started. In our first video, we worked on chord analysis and how to write in the correct pop chord symbols without even knowing what key the music is in. This video covers the more subjective skill of deciding what that key is. In many cases, the music's key signature will help you narrow down your choices to one major key and its relative minor. As we begin looking at music that modulates or changes keys, though, you will find that the key signature isn't always going to give you the correct answer. So it turns out that the key signature is just a crutch you can use, and it fails fairly often and can leave you with no clue that you've got the wrong answer. This is because in reality, music doesn't express its tonality by giving you a key signature. You have to use the signals that the sounding music is giving you to tell you what key it's in. So what are these tonality signals? If I played you some music and then said, okay, sing do, what would you be relying on? In tonal music, it's primarily harmonic cues that help you keep your tonal bearings. It's stereotypical chord progressions that your mind has been trained to use for centering you on a particular tonic. You're probably not even aware of it. You've been acculturated to it from having heard this kind of music your entire life. Harmony isn't the only way to create a sense of home pitch, but it is the way that most Western music does it. So the best way to find the tonic is through the chord progressions in the music and the cadence points and the patterns of tension and release that signal what key you're in. So that's how we're going to determine the key in this class, except without necessarily having to hear the music. The key signature will obviously help you in a lot of music, but for now I won't be giving you a key signature either. Instead, I'm going to give you a string of pop chord symbols, and you get to tell me the key from those. So let's go over how to perform this skill with an example. So the first thing you should look at is the last couple of chords, and use the fact that I will always end our theory exercises in some kind of cadence. In real music, you'll have to find the cadence points yourself and go from there. But in this class, we always will use small segments of music that end in a cadence. So what are the different types of cadences that I can use to end a phrase of music? The main types are authentic, deceptive, and half cadences. You may have heard of a plagal cadence as well, but I won't be using any of these since they're actually rare as actual formal cadences in real music. We'll use the last chord of each of these cadence types to narrow down our options for what key the excerpt could be in. So an authentic cadence ends in a one chord, a major one chord if the music is major, or usually a minor one chord if the music is minor. A deceptive cadence ends in a six chord, minor six in a major key or major six in a minor key. And a half cadence ends in a five chord, and it's always major regardless of the music's mode. Now let's narrow down the possibilities for our practice example. If the cadence is authentic, the last chord would be a one chord. And so the key would be D major. So D major is a possibility for the key, but what if it's a deceptive cadence at the end? In this case, the major sixth chord means that it's a deceptive cadence in a minor key. So what minor key has D major as its sixth chord? Be careful here to make sure the key you come up with has a D major chord in it. And remember that D major has an F sharp in it. So the minor key that we're looking for is F sharp minor, which does have a D major chord as its sixth chord. And we also have to consider that it could end in a half cadence. The last chord would be a 5 chord in this case, and D is scale degree 5 in what key? G major. And D is also 5 in G minor. The 4 keys we need to consider then are D major, F sharp minor, G major, and G minor. If this progression had ended on a minor chord instead, we would have only 2 possibilities. The last chord could be a 1 for an authentic cadence in a minor key, or 6 for a deceptive cadence in a major key. Next, we need to write out the entire Roman numeral progression in each of these keys to see which one makes the most sense, looking particularly at the cadential progression at the end. If you want to pause the video and add the Roman numerals for yourself, please do so now before I fill in the Roman numeral analysis for you. So let's see if the next to last chord makes sense given the possible cadence types. So if this example is in D major ending in an authentic cadence, the next to last chord should be a 5 chord. And since the C chord in D major is a 7 instead of a 5, that means the key is probably not D major. All right, what about the deceptive cadence in F sharp minor? Well, a deceptive cadence goes 5 to 6. And this ending looks like 5 to 6, but remember what a 5 chord in F sharp minor would be? C sharp major. And the penultimate chord here is a C natural chord, not a C sharp chord. So the key is probably not F sharp minor either. So for the half cadences in both G major and G minor, there are lots of possible next to last chords in a half cadence. The most common next to last chords for a half cadence are 1, 2, and 4. Is the C chord a 1, 2, or 4 in the key of G? Yes, it would be a major 4 chord. So now we know that this music is likely in the key of G. But does that mean we're in the key of G major or G minor? The C chord is in G major, but in G minor you have a minor 4 chord. So it looks like we're probably in G major. If you're still not sure at this point about which key is right, then there are some other things you can do to narrow it down further. So when just looking at the cadence doesn't rule out all the possibilities, go through these next steps. First, look for major minor 7th chords. Which chords in this progression are major minor 7ths? Remember that these are the ones where the pop chord symbol doesn't specify the quality, they just have a 7. So both the A7 and the D7 in this progression are major minor 7th chords. Major minor 7ths tend to be key defining chords because they are always dominants. Dominant 7ths are one of the most important ways in which we center ourselves tonally. If you hear a major minor 7th chord, you're going to want it to resolve to 1. So does the major minor 5-7 chord from the key of G major appear anywhere in this progression? Yes, the D7 is 5-7 in G. This progression also has the 5-7 of a different key in there as well, so watch out for these distractor dominant 7ths because they will happen a lot. Beyond looking for 5-7s that confirm your guess, also very often the 1 chord will appear somewhere in the progression. In this case, G major's tonic triad only happens at the beginning of the progression. So here's the whole process. After using cadences to narrow down your options, look for 5-7 chords and maybe also look for 1 chords. And then the very last thing you should do is determine whether the whole Roman numeral progression makes sense in the key. If you get something that starts on a 3 chord or a 6 chord, or it doesn't have very many primary triads in it at all, then you probably don't have the right answer. As you analyze more and more music, you'll get better and better at looking at Roman numeral patterns and seeing whether they make sense. but even now it's something you should always check. And soon we'll have even better tools for knowing whether the chord progression makes sense in the chosen key once we learn about harmonic function. So that's the basics of how to do key finding. Using the chord progression will give you the right answer more often than using the key signature and just melodic information. So practice finding keys using the practice examples that I've linked here until you're feeling confident about it. Every chord and pitch in a piece of tonal music gets its meaning from its relationship to the music's key. To really understand the role that each note plays in making the music sound amazing, first you need to be able to look at Roman numerals and figure out their harmonic functions. So that'll be coming up soon, but before we get there, we need to make sure that you know how figured bass works. So that's what we'll be doing next, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.